Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you, depending on where you are. I'm Malcolm McNaughton, Regional VP for Australia and New Zealand. And what a year of change it's been for banks in this region. Of course, apart from COVID, there's been the launch of open banking in Australia, lots of interesting developments with neobanks, as well as some other more innovative banking models, and of course the explosion of buy now, pay later. With all that change, it's a really challenging time to be a leader in a financial institution, but also super interesting. And we saw that reflected in the stories of a number of leaders that we published in an ebook midway through this year that you may have had the chance to see. We're going to hear shortly from Mark Spry, who is leading the transformation program that resulted from that. But for those of you perhaps not familiar with the bank, Greater Bank is a mutual bank with a rich 75-year history in Australia, enjoying good growth with around 300,000 members currently. Greater has a really strong history of high customer satisfaction, and in a recent survey was named most trustworthy bank in Australia. But despite that strong track record and strong current position, Greater are embarking on this really significant transformation. Given the limited time we have available today, what we've done is extract some key insights from a longer interview that we did recently with Mark. I think you'll find these very interesting, and I hope you also find them very useful. So Mark, to start off, can you share a bit about the scale or the scope of the transformation that you're leading?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Malcolm. Well, I'll start at the beginning. I joined Greater Bank in December 2017 in a newly formed role, reporting through to the CEO. And the purpose of the role was twofold. Firstly, to develop a digital strategy. And secondly, to develop a supporting business case, which we did over the subsequent 9 months, which was successfully approved by board in August 2018. So the scale or the scope of what we're undertaking is really quite vast. It's a core banking platform replacement. It's a complete recreation of our digital channel experiences from the ground up. So that includes internet banking portal and also our mobile banking app. It is the introduction of a new fraud and AML platform. It's using new technology and a new solution for our content management system and also our website. It is moving to public cloud in a really meaningful way. And what I mean by that is material outsourcing to public cloud, which APRA takes particular interest in, and also introducing real-time analytics, again in the cloud, and recreating our EDW, electronic data warehouse, in the cloud again. And that's about it. Those are the main streams. So a very, very big scope of work.
Wow, certainly a comprehensive transformation, and I guess some would say quite risky. It'd be interesting to understand a bit more about the background to that, or the drivers. Why did Greater need to undertake such a major transformation?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So I think I benefited from a lot of work that had gone on before I arrived in terms of the CEO's vision of the future and preparing the board for what I was likely to suggest was necessary, like I say, for us to remain relevant and sustainable. So the board had already sort of formed a view that the future of financial services was changing dramatically. And we kind of all know what those disruptive forces are. Let's call them that. The themes have changed, but I'm going to work through them just for completeness. So from a board perspective, they most definitely acknowledged that customer expectations were changing and that new demographic groups or younger demographic groups, what they were seeking from their banking experience was somewhat different from our traditional customers. Regulator changes in probably 3 different shapes. The first is, I'd say, probably lowering the barriers for entry for new, neobanks and digital banks and in the marketplace. Number 2, open banking can't be ignored. I know it's delayed, but it's inevitable. The changes and the implications of that. And number 3, I probably just point out in terms of data management. So just the expectations of banks in terms of the level of granularity to be able to identify and custom security, provide security that is kind of associated with the sensitivity of the data whilst providing visibility and access to that data and the lineage of that data. Technology changes are also obviously impacting the industry, particularly in the payment space. And lastly, and partly due to open banking, is there's a transparency of fees and charges associated with our lives with banks. And as a result of that, there'll be pressure for us to remain competitive and run very lean operations. Yeah. The big question that the business case answers is, what is it going to take for us to be or remain relevant into the foreseeable future, not just the immediate future? And part of that question is answered by the efficiency in which we run our business.
So some really clear thinking from the leaders and directors of the bank on the future of the institution. Can we talk a little bit about the business case for the transformation and how that reflects the drivers and the goals?
The business case itself, complexity and an early acceptance of that we had to a degree lost connection with what future customers want, what younger demographic groups really are searching for, and what they value in their banking experience, meant that the business case itself actually pitched at a conceptual level. So there's a lot of time put in the business case about creating the right environment for transformative change, and putting the right kind of capabilities in place in that environment. In fact, there was a section of the business case that was referred to as the optimal change construct. Not a very catchy term, but it's exactly what we were trying to create. So one of the early, I guess acceptance, together with the fact that we'd lost a little bit of contact with future customer needs, was that our existing change mechanisms weren't going to be able to support the kind of volume and sophistication of change that we were intending to implement through the transformation journey. So setting up the right environment was a big focus of the business case. Managing to attract the right kinds of skills, capabilities, and experience into that environment, to be able to empower that environment and give it a great degree of autonomy and ability to be able to make decisions and remove its own impediments. Ways of working obviously was a big part of that. Different ways of working within that structure. And lastly, the systems and the processes within the structure that enabled the transformation unit, which is now a division, to maintain a close relationship with customers, existing customers and potential future customers, new markets. And ultimately chart its own course, which is somewhat different to conventional business cases. The net effect of everything I've just spoken about really is that the directors and the board members buying into the vision of what this business could become and accepting the burning platform or the impact of non-action are really sort of placing themselves in a role of venture capitalist, where believing in the vision, having trust and faith in the capabilities and experience of the first kind of key members of the division and the capability sets they inevitably will build out within the organization, and then providing enough freedom of choice and freedom of operation, if you like, within the division, such that it can, to a degree, self-govern, self-optimize, and chart its own course, like I said earlier. So that's kind of the crux of the business case, and somewhat, and certainly in my experience, it is certainly unconventional.
Switching focus to technology, technology modernization is obviously a part of your transformation. Can you share some insights into how you developed your technology strategy and how that supports the overall strategy?
So there was a lot of attention in the business case to this. Again, to give comfort more than anything that we know what we're doing, and to leave us alone to make some of these decisions in detail. And again, similar to what I was saying about sort of shifting the identity of the directors into the venture capitalists, we're kind of shifting the identity of IT within Greater Bank from being very traditional, and I would probably suggest the most mutuals are like this, where we only trust an idea that originates within the four walls of Greater Bank. We have the original idea, we define the requirements, we do the design, we build the thing, and then we run it. And so it's all our own stuff, right? From that to truly orchestrating the various service providers to support us, sometimes stacking those service providers and hosting them with another service provider. And so coming back to what I was saying is the identity is moving from build it, run it, own it to orchestration, which obviously has implications on the skills, again, and the skills and the kind of capabilities you want in IT going forward to run what we've introduced as part of transformation.
Okay. And following on from that, can you talk a bit about your selection of technology partners and perhaps especially for the customer engagement layer?
To Backbase, like probably most customers, was the promise of acceleration, in truth. Yeah. So, as a division, we're 75 folks strong, a fair contingent of consultants, and our run rate or our burn rate, depending on how you see it, is pretty high. So speed is very important to us. Pace is important. So the ability to be able to accelerate UX design and integration of customer-facing technology is how we're using Backbase was paramount. There were other factors, of course. I mean, standardizing those designs was pretty important to us, the ability to tap into ongoing functional improvements over time. And I like the fact that Backbase is centrally located in Europe because we tend to fast follow in Australia in terms of regulatory changes, and new great sort of digital feature ideas tend to flow from Central Europe, in my opinion. So that worked well for us as well. And of course, Backbase allows you to extend functionality too. So I'm not restricted to the widgets and the functions and features that are released. I can build on top of that. And we did execute a formal RFI and RFP, and it was obvious Backbase was going to be in the shortlist, given Forrester and Gartner's reports year on year.
So there's so much else that would have been really interesting to explore, but I'd really like to thank you, Mark, for sharing those insights with us. And just to wrap up the session, recently Greater passed another key milestone in their program, with a larger number of beta customers now having access to the platform. And so we really wish them all the best as they continue on their journey.